if we had better community centres, better mental health services within the community where people can get same-day mental health care, that would just be incredible, and it would take a massive pressure off us so we can spend more time with the patients that really need it, those really complex patients with multiple health issues, that actually, rather than 10 minutes, why don't we spend half an hour with them and really sort out their problems, and everything else that we were doing that we don't have to do could be taken care of by someone else.
For sure. That's so well put. And so then I want to link to long-term health conditions, and particularly long COVID. And actually, it feels particularly poignant speaking to you because we had an amazing Green Party councillor, Darren Parkinson from Bradford, who publicly stepped down because he had long COVID. He's still doing amazing work. He often supports me and helps us with our communications on social media. So thank you, Darren, for everything you do. And at the same time, I think, I don't want to speak for Darren, but lots of people who do have long COVID just feel they kind of have been left behind and there's nothing for them and they're not in the public discourse.
Yeah, very much so. Long COVID is a really poorly understood condition, and it's a multi-system, complex issue, and it will affect everyone differently. Everyone has a different version of long COVID because it is so multi-system. It is so inflammatory. It can cause so many different things to go wrong at the same time, and you're left with these conditions that nobody really wants to touch because there hasn't been enough investment in the understanding, but also the management. And there used to be a long COVID service at most hospitals where it was run by the respiratory team, perhaps, and they would take care of it. All of that seems to have just melted away. And because, like I say, long COVID can affect your brain, your lungs, your skin, your joints. It can affect so many things, your mental health, but also how fatigued you are. We haven't got one group of people looking after it. If I saw a patient like that, I would have to refer them to the rheumatologist just for their joints. I would have to refer them to respiratory people just for their lungs. And it's just not adding up. So not only have we got these people who were really well and healthy a few years ago who are now very affected by their symptoms, and a lot of them have lost their independence and their ability to earn as a result of it. We haven't got anything in place to look after them. And that, we're talking about adults, but it can affect children as well. And so it's a real problem. They come in, I feel really helpless when I see them, to be honest with you, Zack, because I know it's one of those consultations where I know, yes, I can listen to them and yes, I can empathise with them, but there's very limited things I can do to help them, because giving them painkillers isn't going to be the long-term answer. And we don't know enough about the condition to know which specific medication might help reverse some of their symptoms. And that's a massive issue for them. So they have been left in limbo. But it's not just them, it's other conditions where we've seen a lack of understanding and investment in. So fibromyalgia being another one, ME being another one as well. All of these things that have such a kind of multifactorial cause. And we can talk about women's health in the same space, can't we, really? Endometriosis, adenomyosis, all of those things that haven't been prioritised for so long. People have just been left. And it's really hard because we see them, we listen to them, but it's so limited for what we can do.
I feel very emotional listening to you because I find it one of the hardest things to handle as a politician when people write to me, particularly with long COVID, but actually, frankly, yes, all of those conditions, because it feels like my obvious first step is to argue for more funding, to look at more steps for prevention, to make sure there's proper ventilation in buildings, etc. But it also just feels like the decision makers very often, unless they've got someone in their family or they've been personally affected by it, there seems to be almost this psychological thing of, oh, it won't happen to me, and that's unfortunate for that group of people, but we're just going to get on. Yeah, and I think that's where the issue lies for a lot of health issues. Unless they are in the public domain and of interest to the public, then they don't get the recognition and the funding that they deserve. And there's so many health conditions like that. But that's where I think this joined up health service needs to be better. It is so fragmented for people who have these multiple conditions or conditions that affect multiple systems. They often get various appointments with different specialists, but nobody's really talking to each other. So I'll speak to a patient who goes, well, I've got an appointment on Monday and I can't come to your appointment on Tuesday because I've got this letter and I don't really know who I'm going to see or what I'm going for, but I'm going here. And it must be so difficult for them
to go and see a specialist every time. And yes, they're lucky to see a specialist. Well, I say lucky, you know, it's absolutely their right, but they feel lucky. But nobody's really talking to each other, and it's just not joined up in the way that it should be.
And then I'll start with the personal stories in a moment. But my partner, who's a physio, so shout out to the allied health professionals.
Yes.
I watched his father slowly disintegrate because he had pulmonary fibrosis. And there's an amazing group called Action on Pulmonary Fibrosis who do a lot to educate, particularly doctors who can miss the symptoms at the very beginning of it. This isn't just about pulmonary fibrosis, though. I suppose there's lots of conditions. As a GP, how can you possibly know about every condition? But is there more that politics could be doing, maybe, or is it this very much within the health sector about education?
I think there's a number of things there. Yes, you know, as a GP, we can't know about everything, but we should be able to recognise when, even if you don't know what it is, that something is wrong and needs further investigation. I certainly don't know every condition and how every condition is going to present, but I feel like I owe it to my patients to know, actually, this isn't normal, so let's do some tests and find out. And if I still don't know, I should be able to hand over that patient to an expert who might know the answer. I think where it can fall down is if you don't know the answer, but you don't investigate it either. And so that is important. I think, yes, absolutely, we probably do need some more training in certain conditions. Women's health, I'm really passionate about women's health, and I know it doesn't get the attention it deserves, but that we can say the same for lots of conditions. And whether the not just the undergraduate medical training needs looking at in terms of that, because, you know, you shouldn't just do 4 weeks of women's health. You know, they make up 50% of the population. We should be doing a lot more than that. But the GP training as well, you know, how are we actually making sure that these conditions are being taught? Is it, you know, are we just leaving it to the trainers in those tutorials? Are they getting any formal teaching in it? How is it all being examined? We need to make sure that women's health does get examined at every opportunity. We need to make sure that some of these rarer conditions, these students and GP trainees or resident doctors know that they could get a question on that, and so they do need to learn about it. So I do think that, but all of that comes in hand with politics, right? Because the changes need to come from policy and pressure from policy makers, so we can make those changes. We're all amenable to it. We want to learn more as clinicians. We're always wanting to learn more, but it's finding the time and the space to do it, and making sure everything gets a fair footing. It doesn't have to be equal footing, because some things present more commonly than others, but they should be a fair footing.
And you stole my next question, which is great, which I was going to say, women are over 50% of the population. Why is women's health not being prioritised or given 50% of the attention? Where
do I start with that, Zack? Well, historically, everything's been done by men, right? So all the studies on medical conditions, whether it's heart attacks or pain management, all of that stuff has been done on men. And so we've just assumed, I say we, not you and I, but men before us, have assumed that women are just small men, and we can apply the same outcomes that we found on men to women. That is absolutely bollocks. It's just bollocks, because women are a completely different, but have a different biology to us, you know, with their hormones, with their pain receptors, with their anatomy. Everything, you know, all of that is different. The way estrogen affects almost every part of a woman's body will mean paracetamol will affect her differently to what it would with me. So that has not been really investigated or understood or wanted to be understood until quite recently. And we've got to give a shout out to all the people who, and mainly the women who are being pushing for this. All these kind of gynecological issues like endometriosis or fibroids, adenomyosis, all of these things where women have been just told, well, that's just being a woman, put up with the pain, it's just part of the cycle, and you just got to get on with it. Actually, no, you know, yeah, periods are normal, but very painful periods are not normal. Bleeding in between your periods isn't normal. Heavy periods are not normal. All that pain that you get because of these underlying gynecological conditions, where it's just been put down to, oh, it's just a woman. It's not normal. And so women have just been gaslighted in believing that their very painful, very debilitating symptoms had just part of being a woman by men for years and years and years. And of course, the studies that we have for lots of things have just not included women. They haven't included pregnant women. They haven't included breastfeeding women. So we don't, so our fallback is, oh no, well, a pregnant woman can't have that, or a breastfeeding woman can't have that because it's unsafe. And that isn't necessarily true. It's just that we don't have the data because we haven't done the studies on pregnant or breastfeeding women to say that they can or can't have something. And so women's health now, I think, women are standing up quite rightly. We're talking about vaginas and vulvas and all of that stuff quite rightly. We should be. And we are hoping to be working towards, I'm hoping, some like women's health hubs in the community where we can look after women from cradle to grave. And really, so a mum could take her daughter or her own mother to this same place and they could all get treated at the same time for whatever thing they have, because women's health is so much better understood.
I'm feeling really fired up listening to that, and I imagine other people will. There might not be something obvious, but are there any campaign groups or obvious places that people can go to find out more about that and support it?
Womenkind Collective is a really good one, and there's a lady called Dame Leslie Regan who's doing a lot of work in women's health, and I would urge you to see what she's writing about, because she's the champion for these women's health hubs.
I'll definitely check that out, and I hope other people will too.